In this video, I will demonstrate how to use Windows Movie Maker 2.6 software to assemble and publish your video. Begin by downloading the free Windows Movie Maker 2.6 software. If you're using a Mac, download iMovie. The video construction process is very similar. You will need to allow approximately an hour to assemble your video, 2 hours at the very most. Start your project by assembling all the materials you will need to put your video together in one file folder on the computer. Be sure the folder is clearly labeled so that it's easy to locate. Do not work from a flash drive or a thumb drive. Do not move the materials folder once you start working on your video. So let's find my folder. So I'm going to go to My Documents. I'm going to look down here and find Weatherman Video. And there's everything labeled clearly and numbered. I've numbered my images from 1 to 14. I've clearly labeled my audio file and my title page and the one document that will go into my video. So the next thing I'm going to do is to go File, Import into the collection. Here's my whole group. First thing I'm going to do is to import the audio file into the collection. This area right up here is called your collection bin, and that's where all the pieces to your video will sit until you are able to use them to put into the timeline, which is down here. You have a video timeline and an audio timeline and a title overlay timeline. So the next I'm going to go to File, Import Project, and I'm going to import all of my images at one time. Now I have everything in one spot that I will need to put together my video. I made a title page for my video before I started, but I wanted to show you another way that you can do it. I could have gone up here to Tools, Titles and Credit, and selected Title at the beginning of the movie. And I could type in Finding the Mode. Okay. I could change the title animation and make it do something like zooming in. And you see the title over here. This is a preview window. Or I could spin it out. Or maybe I could stretch it. Usually I just like a really plain title. I guess that says something about me, but I don't like things to distract from the video. You can also change the font color. I'm very partial to red, so I'm going to make my font red, my background red, and I'm going to leave the font white. I'm going to boldface it, and I'm going to choose Arial Black, just for a little emphasis. And when I'm finished making my selections, I'm going to click Done, add the title to the movie, and it's going to put my title page right here. So just for the moment, we'll just leave that title page right there. And I'm going to click right over here. I'm going to click this little play arrow, and it's going to play across and show me what my title page would look like in my video. The next thing I want to do is to bring the audio file in, and I'm going to place it right here, right next to the edge of the title page. Because you don't want anybody talking when your title page is playing. Sometimes people put a little music in this space right here just to add a little interest to their video. So we'll just preview that again. Mr. Paul is the weatherman for Channel 11 News. He wants to determine what high temperature will occur most often during the month of July. Okay, so here's Mr. Paul up here, and I'm just going to take him and bring him right down here. And because I know that the voice that related to this image lasts a little bit longer, I'm just going to pull on the image. It doesn't distort the image. It doesn't stretch the image. It only extends the amount of time that the image will play over here on this screen in your video. Mr. Paul is the weatherman for Channel 11 News. He wants to determine what high temperature will occur most often during the month of July. So I can stop it, and I see that I maybe need to pull it just a tiny bit more. Just a tiny bit more. And I can just push this down here. I don't have to listen to the whole thing. I can just... During the month of July. Unfortunately, Mr. Paul is a very busy reporter, covering both breaking news and the weather. He has no time to keep temperature records. Okay, so let's bring Mr. Paul, the busy weatherman, down and put him here and stretch that out a little bit. And you can just pull this down and just listen to the end instead of the whole thing. No time to keep temperature records. Mr. Paul decides to ask his son to help him. His son's name is Dan. Okay, so I need to pull this over just a little bit more and test it one more time. Ask his son to help him. His son's name is Dan. So let's pop Danny in the timeline. His son's name is Danny, and Danny loves math. The weatherman asks, Danny, I would really like to know the high temperature that will occur most often during the month of July. So we'll pull Danny and his dad right down here, and he's asking Danny for a little help. Asks, Danny, I would really like to know the high temperature that will occur most often during the month of July. Can you help me? Sure. So we see that this needs to be pulled down yet a little bit more. And I'm going to test it right here. During the month of July. Can you help me? Sure, Dad, Danny says. The weatherman thanks his son and tells him, at the end of July, I will ask you to tell me what high temperature occurred most often during the month. Okay, I can see that I need to pull my picture down. I'm kind of looking at this bar here, and I know that it's going to pull down right over here over the 3 marks, so I can maybe not spend quite so much time previewing. Most often during the month. Danny sits down and thinks. Okay, I pushed it a little too far. Now I see I need to push this back a little bit. You're seeing that it does not distort the picture. It only causes the image to stay on the screen a little bit longer. Most often during the month. Danny sits down. So I can fix that by just pulling it a little bit farther. And then here's Danny. So let's see if I got it fixed. Occurred most often during the month. Danny sits down and thinks about the problem. How am I going to figure out the high temperature that occurs the most this month? Danny thinks, and he ponders, and he thinks some more. Suddenly, Danny... So the light bulb goes off and Danny thinks some more. Suddenly, Danny remembers what his teacher said in math. Let's see if we can fix that. Problem. How am I going to figure out the high temperature that occurs the most this month? Danny. And he thinks, and he ponders, and he thinks some more. Okay, so I need to pull Thinking Danny over here a little bit farther. Thinks, and he ponders, and he thinks some more. Suddenly, Danny remembers. I think you're probably beginning to get the idea that you're going to be playing this over and over and stretching and adjusting. And he thinks some more. Suddenly, Danny remembers what his teacher said in math class earlier that day. He remembers Mrs. Edwards saying, "Today we are going to learn about mode. When we find the mode, we are looking for the value that appears the most often in a set of data." So let's pop Mrs. Edwards into the track and check. To learn about mode. When we find the mode, we are looking for the value. Oops, I need to push Danny back a little bit. He remembers Mrs. Edwards saying, "Today we are going to learn about mode. When we find the mode, we are looking for the value that appears the most often in a set of data." So right here we have the mode represented. When we find the mode, we are looking for the value that appears the most often in a set of data. How can you remember what mode means? When you think mode, think most. How can you remember what mode means? When you think mode, think most. I'm just going to pull that a little tiny bit. How can you remember what mode means? When you think mode, think most. "That's it," Danny exclaims. "I need to find the mode of the temperatures in July." July. Every day during the month of July, Danny records the high temperature for the day in his notebook. At the end of the month, he takes all of his numbers and organizes the data into a chart. So I have his notebook, and right over here I have his chart. Temperatures in July. Every day during the month of July, Danny records the high temperature for the day in his notebook. At the end of the month, he takes all of his numbers and organizes the data into a chart in order to find out which temperature was recorded the most. Danny finds that 92 was the high temperature that occurred most during the month. That 92 was the high temperature that occurred most during the month. I did it! I found the mode for the month. I did it! I found the mode for the high temperature in the month of July. I did it! I found the mode for the high temperature in the month of July. Danny is so excited. He runs to find his dad. Danny shows the weatherman his data. Danny is so excited. He runs to find his dad. Danny shows the weatherman his data. "Dad, look! I found the high temperature that occurred the most during the month of July." Danny shows the weatherman his data. "Dad, look! I found the high temperature that occurred the most." Shows the weatherman his data. "Dad, look! found the high temperature that occurred the most during the month of July. The mode for July is 92 degrees. The month of July. The mode for July is 92 degrees. The weatherman is very impressed with his son. Great job, Danny. Thank you for your help. You might just have the makings of a great weatherman. Mr. Paul is the weatherman for Channel 11 News. He wants to determine what high temperature will occur most often during the month of July. Unfortunately, Mr. Paul is a very busy reporter, covering both breaking news and the weather. Now, if you wanted to add credits at the end of your video, he's very impressed with his son. Great job, Danny. Thank you for your help. You might just have the makings of a great weatherman. You would go up here to to Tools, Titles and Credits. You would click Credits at the end, and maybe you would type something like and put done, put at the end of your title. And I don't want it to run very long, and you can see what it looks like. Mr. Paul is the... So I don't think we want to preview the whole movie. The next part is to go to File, Save Project As, and you might want to save your project fairly often. So I'm going to call it Weatherman. And because I'm finished with my video, I'm going to do File, Save Movie File. And I'm going to save the movie file to my computer. And it's already named Weatherman. And I'm going to look and see where it's going to save that file. It says C, User Martha Green, Desktop, ITS. And I want it to save on the computer in my documents. And Weatherman Video, because I don't want to have to look for it. Then I'm going to click Next. I'm going to select Other Settings. And there are a whole lot of different other settings. The best one to pick is High Quality Video NTST. Then I'm going to click Next. And it's going to start publishing my video. That means it's going to put together all of the elements of my video. They're going to be linked together, fused together. Until you publish your video, it is still in individual pieces. And if you move your materials folder or you readjust anything on your computer while you're in the process of construction, you're liable to end up with a lot of red X's on your on the bin here, because it disrupts the way the video program is putting the pieces into your timeline. So be sure that you don't move anything until you get to this publication process. Now it's saying play the movie when finished, so sure you want to click Finished, and your video starts playing. And I don't think we need to listen to it all the way through.
Mr. Paul is the weatherman for Channel 11 News.
But you can see how easy it is to publish and construct a video in Windows Movie Maker 2.6. And the reason it's particularly easy to use this program is because of this wonderful timeline that is very, very visual. I just want to mention that there's also a storyboard view, but it's best to work from the timeline. So have fun making your video.